Hello, everyone. Today is August 11th. This is one of the biweekly SIG release meetings. This is a meeting that is recorded and available on the internet. So please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes code of conduct. And in general, just be awesome people. So we are going to do something a little different today, which is actually follow the agenda template of the meeting. So we're going to run through some sub-project updates. We kind of generally do this, but we do this in kind of a more haphazard way. So we're going to run through the project updates, the sub-project updates. We're going to hit Kubernetes to see if there are any new issues to review for SIG release. And then we're going to kick it over to Lori for some project board review. And then again, if there's anything that you want to discuss, that is, Mikhail, if you don't mind putting that in the open discussion, the docs piece. So if there's anything that you want to discuss, you can put it in open discussion. Right now, that is empty. So away we go. First up, licensing. There is no update for licensing. I think this has kind of been quiet for some time now, but there are one or two issues on that board that we probably want to take a look at. So moving into 120, be happy to take some volunteers if people are interested in working on some of the licensing issues. There are not a lot of things to the point where I'm not sure that it would make sense to spin up a licensing sub-project meeting. I figure that we can just do licensing updates within this meeting. But if anyone is generally interested in talking about licensing, learning about licensing, working on some of the licensing things to tackle within the project, let us know. Cool. All right, next up is release engineering. So first things first, we cut a new release of the Kubernetes release repo. And as I put on the notes, it's chunky. It's been quite some time since we cut the last release. So that is, we moved from the 0.3.4 patch up to 0.4.0. 0.4.0 includes a few things, lots of new image builds for Debian base images, the kubectl images, lots of improvements to krell overall on the release notes side. So thank you to Adolfo and Sasha, everybody else who's been working on the release note stuff, on krell overall, the release libraries, and some nice updates to our overall port of the libraries that we use into from the bash libraries over to Go. So that is moving along nicely. I think that we had projected to see a replacement of Inago by the end of the year. And I think that's based on the pace that we're keeping right now, we should still be good to go on that. Fingers crossed. So again, thank you everyone who's been working on that and kind of allowing me to work on other things as a result of that. So any questions on krell, K-release, image builds? Sweet. All right, so specifically for the image builds, there are some new ones on the Debian base image side. So you may know that overall we're working on moving to distroless images for a lot of the components that live in Kubernetes. However, so there is a new image that exists called Go Runner. Go Runner is just a little sugar on top of the distroless static image, and that's meant to provide us the harness that we need to drop the core components, core Kubernetes components, so like the API server, controller manager, scheduler, kube proxy, and what have you, into images and have them be more lightweight images. So starting in 119, we should see images built with that instead. I believe all of our images are up to date at this point, are using GoRunner from 119 forward for the core components. The reason that we maintain the Debian base images is for previous releases, right? So we have 118, 117, and 116, which are currently in support, and we need to continue providing updates to them. So the Debian base images are currently on Buster, Debian Buster, and we've done some incremental updates to those, mostly to pull in security updates. So there's a CVE for apt that was recently handled. There was a CVE for Perl, which we don't directly use, but having it in the image opens us up to that possibility. So those were patched over the last week and a half, and those images are built. I'm still rolling PRs for updates to the previous branches, so that should be done before the end of the week, should be soon. The overall, I would like to move to thinking about a system for automated Debian base image updates, and honestly, automated everything, right? Let the bots handle this. So I have some ideas rattling around in my mind. I would like to turn them into something cohesive before going too crazy with discussion. But essentially, would be leveraging the same mechanism that that Test Infra uses today to update their images. So that would involve some work in making what's called the auto bumper, as well as like the GCB builder within Test Infra, reusable across multiple repos. I think that if we can prove out this pattern, it's something that's generally useful to the entire community because everyone's doing image building. Everyone is somewhat concerned about keeping their images up to date. So I would like the images to be able to trigger their own builds or build on some periodic schedule instead of only on post submits when we are actually trying to build them. I think that this is going to alleviate a lot of the issues that get filed for CVs in these images. So stay tuned for that. That is definitely going to be a 120 instead of a trailing 119 task. Any questions? Yeah, okay, all right. So last one from me, I think on the RHEL side is around Golang updates. So as you may know, we're targeting Go 115.0 for Kubernetes 119. The master and release 119 branches are already on, were already on Go RC1. As of Sunday, I believe, the PR emerged to update that to RC2. So Go RC2 came out on Thursday or Friday, I believe, and I rolled some PRs to get that updated. So we're tracking well for staying close to Golang upstream, which is great. I'm excited about it. It seems like there's been low friction outside of just the mechanics of doing a Go update in general. So I don't imagine, I think one of the big things that we're waiting for, and we'll talk more about that in the release team section, is that the release is essentially gated on Go 115 going live. So I think target dates wise, we should be looking at a Go 115 release soon, which means we will ingest it soon, and we should be clear for the release on August 25th. Any questions? Okay. Lori, you have some updates on process.
I do. They're just real quick. So last week, I took a look at the
And
release.
we can't hear you if you're speaking.
I can hear her.
I can hear you too.
Yeah.
Weird.
Same.
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So, Stephen, can you hear me now? This is strange.
Yep. Stephen, can you hear anyone?
Yeah, I guess not.
Yeah.
I can hear you, Laurie.
Okay, so maybe I should just go and he'll figure out his sound. So basically what I did was I looked at the release engineering board and went through some of the issues that were in the in progress column. There were a lot more at the time. I've split the in progress column to have this other column, which is called in progress, but no action in more than or equal to 14 days. So I'm going to spend some time at the release engineering meeting going through these issues with you who join those meetings. But in the meantime, if you'd like to do that asynchronously, because you might see that you're assigned to some of this stuff and you want to talk about, well, should I still do this? Is this important at this time? What should I do? Should I hand it over? You know, whatever you would like to do, like you can reach out and talk to me and we'll figure out a plan B. So, and if you also want to bring back the work that you were doing to focus on that, that's also cool. But I'm just trying to get a sense of like, what are we actually doing right now? And are you getting work across the finish line? Are you facing any issues along the way? Do you need docs? Do you need reviews? Whatever you need, just let me know and we'll work that out. And we also took a look at, so Sasha, Jorge, Stephen, and Tim and I took a look at these items in closer detail and spitballed a prioritization structure for them. And we identified some themes. And so Stephen has just talked about two of them, the base images and then the Golang updates. We also have some items around CREL that we want to get going for 120. And there might be other themes in this pile as well. One related topic that I'm looking at. So I'm actually going to take some of those themes and some of the work in release engineering board and draft a roadmap around this topic, which is planning a short cycle stability release. A short discussion came up on this topic like end of last week. Obviously, we have been working on stability, especially through the CI policy improvements and the work Stephen's doing, the work that many of you are also doing on those or other initiatives. But how can we actually keep going in a coherent way? So like having an actual direction and focus. Because the end goal is to never have a scheduled stability release at all, but actually to have stability happening continuously. So how can we actually get there? And that might require some process, and it's also going to require handling some of these technical issues that are more tactical. So that's basically it. And I'm just going to keep working on this board, and I have a session with a few after this where we will go into the process of release engineering, and so that I'm not running that meeting and that process, so that many of you can actually do that instead. So does anybody have any questions? All right, I guess one thing that I just remembered is that SIG testing is meeting tonight, and they will be talking about this work on CI policy improvements. So what's been done, and then what comes next. And I know some of you are involved there or want to get involved, so you might want to join.
Thank you, Lori.
Did you end up hearing anything?
So at some point my headphones just dropped out, and I was like, I think I missed the first half of what we have been discussing in the background anyway. So So thank you for all of the improvements that you've been doing. You've been doing some really awesome work, and I think it's been felt not just in the SIG but across the community.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the support for process improvements. It's not in every open source project, so.
Alrighty. So next up, we're going to float into the release team sub-project updates. I'm going to start really quickly because this came up on the channel. It has come up on the channel a few times, so we should set the record straight and communicate to the community appropriately. So a few things, timing for the cycle, nothing has changed. We are still, as always, a release. When we name a date, it is a tentative date. It is, you know, it is at the mercy of the whims of the various things that happen throughout the release cycle, and this one has been a particularly interesting one. So I appreciate everyone hanging tough and continuing to deliver the high quality that you usually do. So we're still on target for 8/25. We are moving into a KubeCon blackout period break. There is about a week and change, I think, up till until KubeCon EU, and we want to make sure that people have the appropriate time to kind of just decompress, prepare for talks, prepare to attend talks. If they need an overall break, that's what this period is for. Following that period, we will be releasing soon afterwards, assuming everything still looks good. With regards to Codethon, as Lori mentioned, there are some CI policy improvements that have been happening in a joint effort between SIG testing and SIG release. And that's been going well. It seems like it's been going pretty well. Thank you to everyone who's been working on that. It's a tremendous effort to take on, and it's something that frankly gets overlooked when we're kind of going through the motions of being excited about feature enhancement work. So I do appreciate everyone taking the time to slow down and step back from that work to think deeply about stability overall. So this goes into the planning a short stability cycle. It's, you know, in my opinion, we should, as Lori was mentioning, we should never need a stability release, right? Every release should be stable. So if it means pumping the brakes for a few weeks during a release, I'm heavily in support of that. Tim is as well. And the general consensus from testing is they would prefer more stable than less stable. So Codethon, right? So with regards to Codethon, we have extended Codethon to some indefinite, rather we've extended code freeze and pushed out Codethon to some indefinite period. This was initially discussed in the first draft of the updated release schedule. And the initial idea that I had was we just don't thaw. Rather, we don't thaw until the release is released. And it looks like we're moving towards that point. I think I would prefer, and talking over with the release team, I think I would prefer making the decision to just not thaw until the end of the cycle, as opposed to continuing with some vague will they, won't they uncertainties around when code thaw is going to happen. So let's release team leads. Let's discuss today, make a final decision on that. And I will be preparing a note to the community as well. Any concerns about extending Codethon until the end of the cycle.
I think we'll probably touch more on this during the retro, but I'll say for the rest of the sort of development community that's not attending the regular release team meetings, what's going on with Codethon and Code Freeze has been kind of a mystery. Already talked to Taylor about adding some stuff to the release lead handbook, both about providing regular weekly updates and the need to provide updates whenever the schedule changes. Because the schedule's been changing, there's been nothing on KDev.
The schedule has not been changing, really. We've
it has.
We've added.
There was a date for Codethon, and that date was removed, and it's been silent for about 3 weeks.
So, okay,
I think,
yeah.
I think on that front, I absolutely hear you in terms of meaning, like we had talked about, just, you know, getting more information out on that front. When we went to delay code thaw, we sent something out to KDev as well, just saying, hey, this is indefinitely blocked. Nothing has changed within those 3 weeks too, but you know, like you said, you know, more clarity is always better, more messaging is always better, and so we should have something out today on that front so that the community's aware of what's going on. And then I think weekly updates are just kind of like, you know, here's what happened this week with SIG release makes a lot of sense, or the release team subproject, I'm sorry.
So Max and I had talked about getting some sort of cadence around this type of internal communications going. So maybe there's actually a template, like a sort of a visual format for like when we might communicate things and when, so that it's just something you can have in your hand.
Yeah, I think that's, I think that the meeting updates are close to what we might want to send out, a stripped down version of that. That is, I think that was the initial intention of that update, actually. So we'll get back to doing that. But yeah, they're outside of the indefinite freeze and the additional RCs that we've been adding to allow people to test RCs. We have not been shifting around the schedule or anything like that. But totally right in saying that there should be more clarity. So today, expect a note, but you're hearing it here first.
Yeah, maybe some template with like when to communicate things and also where, because that's also it's like could be like a checklist when announcements go out.
Yeah, it's mostly KDev and weekly, right? Just the release team lead does occasionally send out notes to KDev to inform them of upcoming dates, and we usually do that around as we're coming up on those milestones. But a consistent email, whether it's a Monday morning, afternoon kind of thing, across the cycle would be useful too.
Yeah, one of the reasons why this wasn't such a thing in the past was that we used to have a weekly community meeting, and there was a release section in that tended to be 10 to 15 minutes long as we neared the end of the release, and that doesn't exist anymore. So
that's a good point.
I don't know if that would be
I
don't know if that would be the best forum, because look how big the community
grew. It's monthly now. It's monthly now, so it won't do us any good.
Yeah.
Right, but also even just a meeting format, given the size of the project and how many people might not watch a video. I think it's interesting to see what communication formats we feel like we have the highest readership around. Like, is it email? Is it Slack? I don't know if we've ever looked at that.
There's a little bit of discussion too. I can't remember which meeting it was at. It might have been a release leads and technical lead meeting, but they had talked about some SIGs are using GitHub capturing meeting notes in there, and then you have that searchability. So maybe that's another potential option to moving it in there.
Yeah, so I'd mentioned to Tim that I think I would be happy to guinea pig doing HackMD notes for SIG release instead, and then moving those into GitHub on a weekly basis, right? So that searchability is pretty awesome, and then DIMS with the Hound code search tool that makes it really easy to jump in and see what you need to for the release. But yeah, I don't know who just mentioned it around leadership. Well, that's a really good point. These notes should probably also go out to the SIG leads list. The expectation is that if you're a lead for SIG subproject, that list. So I do think that that's a good additional communication form. Cool. So any questions before we close that?
So you said we discussed this during the release team section, so I actually want to ask this, which is that what's our level of confidence in the release schedule for Go 115?
They've been tracking pretty well so far, outside of the security releases. So I think we should expect it in less than 2 weeks. Is that good, Josh? Or...
Yeah. I just,
okay. Okay.
I wanted to ask, and I wanted to get that in our notes because I don't have any insight into Go's release processes. So
yeah, and we're going to be. What's
go
up,
ahead.
Laura?
I was just wondering if there's any way to have more certainty. Like I'm sure you're talking to people, but are there like a product manager or something who would?
I can ping the team. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's just a way to get a clearer read on their timeline.
I think they also have an issue on the Go repo that is kind of an umbrella issue where they explicitly list all the things that are blocking the release, and they have so much automation that thing is actually like up right down to the second on the things they are waiting for the next release to come out. But don't quote me on that, please.
Yeah, so they have a release. They have a release milestone and a set of issues to aggregate. So across like release notes, remaining blocking issues, things like that. They don't directly dictate timing, though. So. Okay. Anything remaining on the code thought things, comms to KDev, release timing stuff? Okay, over to Taylor for the rest of the release team update.
Hey, hello everyone. So very excited to be here with you this morning. Even more excited to announce that we have a 120 release lead, and that person is on the call, and that is Jeremy. Actually, hold for 2 seconds. I'm going to tweet that out. Oh, that's out in the interwebs. So congratulations, Jeremy. I know you're going to make a fantastic lead. Yeah, we love you. You're awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Super excited. And my daughter's excited too.
Should be fun. Should be the fun last release here of 2020. Speaking of 119, we have 7 open PRs. Only 1 is critical urgent. Looks like that's getting worked on. We have 15 open issues for 119 still. 6 of those are critical urgent. And then some need assignments in terms of that level. So I know the team's looking at that. We went into, so we are on a break for KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, the week leading up to and then week of. So hope that everyone's able to get some rest and relaxation time in this period. But again, we're going to be kicking those meetings back off on Monday, August 24th, the day before our targeted release, which is August 25th. So as of right now, we mostly look good. I'd say confidence is high, like in the 90% or higher in terms of going live as of right now. Haven't, you know, I've been on previous releases where we've gotten something a day or two before, and that's impacted the release date. So you know, anything can happen, but as of right now, we're looking pretty good. And then there have been a lot of items put into the retro already, but as always, encourage everyone to check that out. Please drop in anything that you think is relevant into that release retro so we can get better. This release, again, has been absolutely quite different from most releases, especially around timing, especially around communication, especially around process improvements and subgroups and efforts that are getting kicked off. So all of which are making the project or going to make the project a lot better. But you know, with more people and projects and focuses comes more communication, and that's always hard to get right the first time out. So we're more than welcome your feedback. Somebody once told me it's always DNS, and it absolutely is. It's communication problems are mostly the cause of most things. So thank you for the feedback thus far, and if you have anything to put in the retro, would be most appreciated. Any questions on 119, KubeCon break, anything of that sort? I will be scheduling those meetings for the 24th and the 25th, no later than this Wednesday of this week, just to have a couple of things going on, but be able to sit down and send things out, make sure I have a signature on my email and things of that nature. But any other questions on that front for 119? For 120, don't at me, at Jeremy on that front. Awesome. Let's move into CI Signal with Stephen.
Hello again. So CI Signal, new pending subproject. We're targeting formation for this week. That issue has been open for quite some time. I think that the discussion between ourselves and SIG testing has been essentially solved in terms of scope. So we just need to coalesce all of the thoughts into a nice little mission statement. Essentially what that is, the one sentence is do exactly what the CI Signal team on the release team does today, but for all of the release branches, right? I think that is the first start. I think for people who have spent some time in SIG release, in and around the release team, you'll see that a lot of our sub-teams for the release team are extensions of other groups, right, across the project, right? So enhancements has a correlation, same with CI Signal and formerly test infra, release engineering stuff, comms, what have you. So CI Signal very clearly has a close relationship with SIG testing, and it's been really nice to see the collaboration around the CI improvement and stability tasks over the last few weeks move forward. So everybody, keep it up, keep pushing. We will have an official place for that stuff soon, at least from the release perspective. So we're, again, focusing on release blocking, release informing items. This sub-project would also be responsible for defining what release blocking and informing looks like. Given that we have two wonderful new technical leads, our recently appointed technical leads, Sasha and Jorge, I wanted to make sure we align them with the focuses that they've had over the multiple cycles at this point. So Sasha has been focusing deeply on the release engineering side, improvements around Krell and destroying a Nago and all that good stuff. and Jorge has been a release team lead, has done lots of work on CI signal in general across multiple cycles. So Jorge is going to be taking point on formation of the CI signal subproject and execution day to day, along with surprise, Dan, I'm going to be appointing you as a subproject owner as well. You have been doing some phenomenal work, both on the release engineering side and the CI signal subproject side, or the soon-to-be CI signal subproject side. So I think it makes a lot of sense for you to take an active leadership role there too. Cool. So now, Dan and Jorge will give you some updates on what we've been doing around CI improvements.
Jorge, I don't know if you want to start, but I can give a general update.
Go for it. You're more up to date on all the things.
Cool. All right. So as we've mentioned a few times throughout this meeting, adding the limits and resource requests has increased the amount of flakes and stuff we've seen, but it's slowly starting to turn into less flakes because we know how things are scheduled now. So when we see issues, we know how to address them rather than it looks like there's resource contention here. So specifically, which this is somewhat has been in the past outside the scope of CI signal, work on the pre-submits especially is where we've seen some improvement. For instance, on the verify pre-submit, we saw some out of memory errors, which we're starting to see those more frequently because we obviously have limits now on memory. But those are good things because we can now address that and look at why that's happening and correct those specific jobs rather than just, scaling the cluster or something like that. So overall, I think that on all of the release blocking jobs, we now have limits and requests set. So that is very good. And then in regards to 1.19 stuff, we've mostly just been cleaning up some flakes, and actually the SIGs have been super responsive on that. So I think that's somewhat of a testament to keeping code freeze around for longer, because if folks want to move forward, they need to fix things. So I think that's in support of kind of the strategy we've taken here. So overall, making a lot of changes that are going to not only make improvements right now, but last into the future. So exciting to see.
And then in terms of the merge blocking jobs that are related to the current policy in place or being worked on, the guaranteed QoS pods, do we have an update on that?
Yeah, so that would be the pre-submits that
okay.
I was mentioning. So I don't think we have limits in place on all of those yet. I need to check in at the checklist again. But as I mentioned, there are some that have been introduced on a number of those. But obviously the ramifications of that are a little bit bigger because if something's consistently failing and we can't merge anything, that's a bigger problem than a periodic job failing. So continue to push forward on that. As I mentioned, I think there's actually a comment on the CI signal sub-project issue. Typically the pre-submits have been out of scope for CI signal. However, this has kind of been, as mentioned already, more of a joint effort. So as we've been adding to the periodic jobs, we've kind of jumped in there as well. So working alongside SIG testing has probably been a good experience in regards to how the sub-project is going to need to collaborate between the two SIGs in the future. So I think that we'll continue to make slow but steady progress on all of those.
Hey, Josh. Thank you, Dan, for the update. Josh, are you sure you want to defer or?
Okay, well, this is just real quick, which is, I don't know that anybody's communicated this back to SIG release, but we had a discussion in the LTS working group. And one of the things that we decided is not going to be up to WGLTS because it wasn't part of original mandate, is deciding what the length of patch support is for 117 and 118. Given the 119 release schedule, that might be a moot point, but I just wanted to put an item here to basically officially punt that back to SIG release to say, you know, hey, it's really up to SIG release to decide how long patches for 117 and 118 are going to be released. The official change in policy takes effect for 119.
Agreed. Yeah. So did you have any discussion regarding, because the remaining open item for the annual support policy was retroactive support. Was there movement on that discussion?
Yeah, the movement was retroactive support is not part of the LTS cap. And that's 117 and 118 are the retroactive support, right?
Gotcha.
We're already in a situation, right, where if you are supporting for 3 releases because of the length of 119, that is nearly a year anyway.
Yeah.
So if release engineering wants to follow 3 releases, then it becomes sort of a de facto policy. But we decided that the LTSWG was not going to decide that because that's not part of what was accepted as the cap.
Sounds good. So back to us, it sounds like.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to put it on the agenda here, because if we're punting something back to you, wanted to officially punt it back to you.
Perfect. Because I was actually waiting for a response from LTS about it. So, okay, perfect.
Yeah, sorry, we went into sleep mode because for the KEP, we need to update the support docs when 119 comes out. And gotcha. Then we're pretty much in sleep mode, planning to disband when 119 finishes support. We haven't been having meetings.
Cool. So I think what would be great is kind of a debrief before we move into disbandment. If y'all could schedule some time to come to one of the SIG release meetings, and maybe, I don't know, work with Lori if you to figure out a good time and what we should and shouldn't talk about. Maybe run through the KEP one final time and see what we did and didn't do.
Okay.
Awesome. Appreciate the update. All right. So I think, Lori, I'm going to kick it over to you. We can either choose to walk through the board or we can run through some Kubernetes issues.
Maybe we look at the project board and see what we've already teed up and spend 5 minutes on that. And then look at the new issues to see if there's anything that's really looking important. So yeah, I've got everything teed up now. So let me find the issues. Or no, I'm going to the...
Do we want to flip that? Because the issues might be pretty quick.
Okay.
We have no new ones.
We have, yeah. So let's look through. I haven't actually looked at this list in some time, so I'm not familiar with the contents. I guess we go from the bottom.
Let's do you want to do recently updated and down or?
Usually I would start at the oldest.
Okay, cool.
So, I mean, here's one from 2015, a few of them. I'm assuming people are familiar with these really, really old ones. Do we have any plan to do anything with those?
So the closest one that I'm familiar with is the automated Debian base images. That is actively being worked. I think the initial request is done from the perspective of we've moved the As of last week, we've moved all of the Debian base image building into Kubernetes release. It triggers on human changing the tag. The post submits happen as a result of well, the post submits trigger a build, and so I think we're a lot farther than we were before. There's some automation that I still want to do, but I'll likely close out that issue and open up a new one for it.
Maybe I think this is it's currently in V120, so I'm not sure it's showing up on any boards right now. It'd be just good to double check, and then it's there as well.
I think we have that one dragged in for release engineering.
Yeah, I think so too, but it'd be good to check.
Yeah.
And then, so anything else from a year or more ago, I would say we should do something about that.
Yeah.
Just generally.
Yeah, I'm seeing some stuff that might be complete. Switching build scripts to using Go modules, that's probably done. I don't know if Dims is still here. Maybe you know Dims.
He was, yeah.
Sorry, what was the question?
The switching build scripts to use Go modules and stop requiring Go path. That might already be done, right?
There might be a couple of straggling places, I think.
Okay.
Even if we could look at these old issues, pull out what's remaining and close them, because they're so old that so much has changed that it's a different world.
Yeah.
For whatever was going on at the time.
So maybe let's reverse the order and check out the really recent ones. It sounds like the old ones are going to take a bit of work.
Yeah, we wouldn't do it here. We would have to do that elsewhere. So if we start at the top, we have kubectl SKU tests are failing. This is critical urgent.
So SIG CLI is looking at that. Essentially, there are a bunch of interesting things with the way that the version markers are being utilized. And these are essentially tests that I believe should not be man-made. They should be generated because of the way that you need to do the marker extraction, right? It's prone to error, which is why some of these tests are failing. And Daniel is probably going to say something similar.
Yeah. And the version markers are now being published correctly. However, the periodic build jobs, they don't publish version markers if the build already exists. So if you look at like the duration minutes, for instance, and I just added a comment to this effect on this issue today. Typically it just checks and says, oh, this build already exists, exit. It's very short job. But if the build doesn't exist, then it will build it and push the extra version markers. So unless the build doesn't exist, then those version markers are not getting updated. So the other jobs that instead are building those versions, I don't know if we want those to also be updating the version markers. I would think yes.
Can we sidebar the conversation, or
yeah. Version markers could
too much stuff.
Be its own release meeting.
Why don't you leave a note now in the thread so that we know that we should tee up the discussion, like put it in SIG release, like what we ought to discuss. And also, I'm not taking notes right now, so
okay.
Maybe someone else should do that.
That makes sense.
I've got two hands, but one brain.
Laurie, you're slacking.
Yeah,
I know, I'm slacking.
I thought you were in the Matrix, Laurie.
No, not yet. I'm moving there on the weekend. So yeah, that looks like a sidebar conversation, and we can get some resolution.
Dims, I think we need to update the title on this one. It sounds like that we're going to continue with the S390X support. That people are actively working on it.
This is the stick. So I need the stick. So leave it open, please. And then we'll. So it's pending one more VIP doc that we are adding in SIG Arch. So there's at least two distinguished engineers from IBM showed up here. So I would like to.
Wait. Yeah. Fair. Can we get an assignee on it and flag it as SIGArch as well?
Yeah,
you can put me on.
What
Okay,
is SIG Release's role here? Just to be aware of it, or is there any work to be done?
Action.
Yeah.
Action if we
The
need
action
to.
for the
action if we need to. Okay.
Yeah.
So if not if, once the SIGArch guidance passes, and we determine that this S390X folks haven't done much for a period of time, what we would then do is stop releasing the S390X artifacts by default, which we are doing right now. So SIG release has to stop doing that.
Okay. All right. Do we have an assignee from the group here? Someone would like to be that person.
I just assigned DIMS.
Oh, sorry. Okay, didn't hear that.
So yeah, until we have a response from SIGArch,
right.
I'll put it in the blocked column of the board.
Right. I also have 2 ears, but they seem to be broken. Okay, moving on to Go 115.0, this item.
So no updates there outside of what we gave a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
After Ben's update, we updated Kubernetes as well. So that one's already assigned to Liggett and myself, so we should be good there.
Okay. This action items umbrella issue. So I'm actually thinking the format of this is, like I don't think this, I could see this getting bloated and also not being looked at. So I think we should abandon this experiment. But there are some items here that we should take a look at. I would make separate issues going forward.
So I would say this, I think part of the reason for the attention is that we tend to spend more time for non-issue bug triage CI signal people, we tend to spend a little bit more time in our repos as opposed to Kubernetes directly. I would say if this issue was in Kubernetes, it was in SIG release as opposed to KK, it would get more attention. So I'm just going to move it there.
Yeah, but I also think maybe separate issues because there's lots of different people, lots of different topics that might be just the easiest way to do this.
So maybe what we can do is both approaches, right? An umbrella item would get assigned to you instead, and you can work on chasing people down for the individual items.
Okay. But basically we have here, this was one thing that I'm not sure we should follow up now. To formalize in policy and force going forward, we were going to collect contact information. It was Carlos, Dan, Adolfo, and Jorge. This was related to requiring contact information, list email notifications for all jobs that are not in informing blocking dashboards. So there's the policy work, and then there was, I think, just sweeping a work file and getting the information.
Yeah, this should be somewhat, at least from a technical perspective, it's somewhat done because your jobs can't be in certain places without having some of that information. But I think verification that that's actually true.
Yeah, so maybe we can hear from one of these folks because most of them are on the call.
I'm gonna take a look at this week.
Is that Adolfo?
It was Adolfo, yeah.
Carlos.
Okay.
Carlos.
Oh, Carlos.
Oh. So that we can just reduce the number of owners then to Carlos. I'll edit it on my other browser, which has my GitHub open after the meeting.
I can drop it. I'm already in the issue.
Yeah. Okay. And then these things we've actually talked about, fostering the bond with scalability, and then there's the content related to Go upgrades, which is a documentation job. How are you doing with that, Steven?
It changes every time I do it.
Okay.
So once we've landed the Go 115 update, I'm going to come back to the documentation. But literally, I think it's novel experiment every time we do a Go
right
update.
And there's changes, so it's harder to And then what about Veronica's Bazel notes? That's related, but different. Veronica, do you have a plan for those yet?
Hi, sorry, I was muted.
Sure.
Both hardware and non-hardware. Sorry. Yeah, well, I wanted to discuss that with you in our next meeting, like for a plan.
Yeah, that's fine.
Currently, my plan is working on it, and I'm currently working on it. But like, obviously, I need to set it more like in a concrete.
Okay, so we'll do that then.
Yeah, we'll discuss it. Yeah.
Okay, so then moving on to the pre-submit tests for Windows.
Let's punt that with a minute left.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think we should spend more time next meeting on
the
boards?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. We set like maybe half the meeting?
Yes, assuming we have the assuming we have less updates from the various sub-projects, because I think the boards can very easily get, the hope is that we can do more of the triage during the sub-project level stuff, and those updates can filter up to the SIG release meeting instead.
Okay.
I will say for the one that is next on the list, that's related to CVE, and that has already been addressed. I just need to shoot some PRs out for it.
Okay. So I guess we should call it a wrap unless anybody has any last, well, it's now at half the hour.
Well, it has been a pleasure, everyone. Always fun hanging out with y'all. I think this was a super productive meeting. Thank you again immensely for all the work that y'all do, especially with such a tough cycle. Keep it up. Keep it up. We will see you soon. Later.
Yay. Thanks.